approach today has been to take quite a high-level overview of the carbon markets and the potential that they might represent to the game ranching industry. It's something that I know a lot of people have a lot of interest in, but the complexity of carbon and the way that it is monetized across landscapes is a significant barrier to understanding what the opportunities look like. So the time I have here today, of course, is not going to be sufficient to dig into that kind of detail, but hopefully it'll sketch where I think the opportunities lie in the game ranching industry. And a lot of this is linked to the earlier discussion that came up briefly around the issue of carbon quality. So I'm very happy that has sort of introduced the topic here today, because the questions around quality, I think, are central to the opportunity that is represented by the wildlife ranching industry. So here we see the famous Guardian article that started the rot, or maybe exposed the rot, depending on which side of the press that you are on. The 90% of rainforest credits offset by Vera, the biggest certifier, worthless. Okay. Strong language. I'm not sure that I agree with that assessment. There are certainly many problems in the carbon markets. Whether they are worthless is quite a strong statement. There are a lot of complexities and a lot of subtleties here, and there are some excellent projects in Africa, and there are some appalling projects in Africa. And this sort of approach to the sort of blanket statements is really just not helpful to making this industry better. And there's no question that it needs to be made better. There's no question that there are problems. So let's have a look at what the response has been, what the problems really are. And this comes from some of my consulting work, where in the last year and a half or so, I've reviewed, I forget the exact number, but around 40 different projects across the world, not only in Africa, on behalf of large corporates like ExxonMobil and Chevron and various other interested parties. I have this in red, and I seldom use red on a slide, but in this case, it was fully justifiable, is that really the real quality problems emerge from an overarching problem, which is the lack of expertise in managing landscape scale land use projects that we see in the carbon industry. And again, I think this is where potentially the game ranching industry, with its experience in some of these matters, could add to expertise in the landscape. I mean, to be honest with you, sometimes my jaw is hanging open as to how some of these projects manage to persuade companies to part with millions of dollars for the initial stages of a carbon project, when they lack the skills and the expertise to implement. So this is the overarching problem I see, and let's have a look at what those details are. Of course, the first thing that people tend to pick on is the monitoring, reporting, and verification of the carbon credits. Yes. But in my experience, these are usually very simple issues. We've been on this for a good 15 years. The technology improves every year. The resolution of the satellite data improves. The tools improve. The allometric equations improve. We really are capable of measuring carbon at an acceptable level, with perhaps the exception of below ground carbon. But soil and above ground carbon, it really is a trivial measurement these days. But what do we see? Why is there a problem? And again, this points to the lack of expertise. Accounting for topography and topographic variation in vegetation growth. I mean, we all know that plants grow more in the valley than they do on the top of the hill. The amount of projects I see that treat a landscape as a flat planar surface, measure the highest rates of carbon accumulation at the bottom of the valley, and then apply it to the entire surface, which results in overcrediting. This is, results in that overestimation of carbon sequestration. But it's an undergraduate level geospatial analysis problem. It really isn't, a deep AI learning thing that we need to attack. Poor spatial sampling procedures. How many samples did you take across the landscape? This stuff has been taught in geospatial analysis for 30 years. And we still see, sampling concentrated on one corner near the road, instead of, spatially representative over a landscape. So very simple MRV problems that are easy to solve is the most common problem with MRV that I see. I do not see, with the exception perhaps of below ground carbon, which is very difficult to measure, I do not see major MRV problems that could not be addressed by addressing the overarching problem, which is the lack of expertise. Where I do see huge problems are around the social and the benefit sharing in projects. And again, I've left that lack of expertise headline in red because, again, these are not massively difficult problems to solve. They are slightly more difficult than the MRV problem, for sure. Simple, what is normal practice in social science around participation and social engagement is just not happening. It's very poorly implemented because people are very poorly trained in social science, or we have a dominance of natural scientists who look down on social science practice as not as rigorous or as irrelevant. Of course, in many African countries, there are genuine issues with community rights to the carbon resource, and we see all sorts of tricks and maneuvers on the part of project developers to try and address that, whereas in fact you should be addressing the government and in terms of allocating the rights to those resources to those communities. We see, to be honest, low prices across the board. And a low price just restricts the possibility of what you can do with the community, what you can, the social problems that you can address as a result of carbon income. And then there's definitely a problem around institutional weakness. Our social institutions, especially local social institutions across Africa, have been weakened by the imposition of colonial institutions and active undermining of social institutions. But then, again, the lack of expertise in the frameworks or the social science frameworks that are designed to address these institutional problems means that we don't actually come with proper solutions to look at some of the social issues. This is where the game ranching industry comes in here in terms of biodiversity. And so, we never really measure biodiversity as a co-benefit, actively measured as a co-benefit. I know there are some projects that do, but it's never front and center there. And this is where the wildlife ranching industry really has a significant advantage here, because we've got such good data around the biodiversity on these various properties. And I'm afraid this is about to get worse. We are indulged in a snake oil selling exercise called biodiversity credits, which nobody can tell me what they are or how they work, but speak to me about them all the time. When we already have a metric, okay, we know already that, generally speaking, landscapes which accumulate carbon also result in increasing biodiversity. And this is compounded by the fact that a lot of the methodologies under Vera or the gold standard lack any kind of methodological procedure to measure biodiversity. So how has this been addressed? The Integrity Council for the Voluntary Carbon Market has come up with the 10 core carbon principles. And if we just have a look through these, we can see where this statement about 80% of carbon credits being junk. Well, which aspect of that is junk? There's a little bit of subtlety and a little bit of complexity here that we need to apply. For me, the biggest potential for increasing quality is here around number 9, the sustainable development benefits and safeguards. And that feeds into both the social and the biodiversity aspects that we could improve a lot on in terms of the integrity of carbon credits. Game ranching sector, as I've said before, biodiversity co-benefits is our competitive edge, but we need to address the social co-benefits as well, okay? These are our most valuable partners, our poor rural communities that often live nearby, are our partners in improving quality. Help them to build their institutions, the expertise and the real benefits that they get out of carbon projects, and we'll lift the price and the quality of our own carbon credits. Game ranching sector, most game ranches are too small, biomass is low, but there's a solution in that group projects are a standard methodology, okay? So we can group projects together. But we need to be consistent. Can you guys work together? I mean, seriously, you're laughing for a reason. I don't think you can, but there's a challenge for you. We've got these inconsistent and disputed ideas around what constitutes good wildlife management, carrying capacity, ecosystem function, these short-term views. Guys, you need to get together and get a consistent approach to what you do. This is really important because no one's going to put together a group project while everybody's arguing about how to manage a particular landscape. This world of personal ideologies, prejudice, and pessimism when it comes to working with rural communities, get rid of it, guys. These guys are your best assets for quality. I recognize that the industry requires, a certain independent spirit. A lot of you guys take a lot of financial risks. A lot of you are personalities without which the industry would not exist. I completely recognize that. And we need to figure out a way of keeping that energy, that passion, that drive. It's a weakness, but with respect to carbon projects, but it's a huge strength in terms of maintaining this industry and driving it forward. So a little bit of repeat there. What does a quality carbon credit look like? I think I've outlined a lot of that. And I'd prefer to leave a little bit extra time for discussion on that afterwards. Thanks very much.